talk about a couple of writers who have focused on baseball as their topic. The first is Roger Angell, who wrote about baseball, especially the World Series, for the New Yorker from about 1967, I want to say, until the 80s. He was a New Yorker guy, and I'm probably underestimating. He probably wrote about him even longer. His work were collected into various books, like The Summer Game and Late Innings and Season Ticket. I'm pretty sure I had the last one when I was a kid. And also the writer Thomas Boswell, who wrote about baseball for the Washington Post from the 70s into the 90s. Both these gentlemen are fine writers, and they know how to structure a piece. They know how much interest a given topic will hold, and they've written some very good things on aspects of baseball that don't always command general interest. And one of the functions of good writing and good culture is to show that something you had taken for granted is really, has fascination and charm and far more complexity and detail than you would suspect. And Angell and Boswell both do a good job of sharing this. They write pieces about aspects of the game that aren't, they aren't just about the players. So Boswell, for example, writing in the Washington Post, but when there was no Washington team, wound up writing about the Baltimore Orioles a lot, I imagine, since they were right next door. And he wrote a very good biographical piece about the manager Earl Weaver, one of the most successful managers in baseball history. And he also wrote a really good piece on the Ripken family, who's before Cal Ripken Jr. became such a legend. He wrote a fine piece about Cal Ripken Sr. and Cal Jr. and the brother Billy, and just the whole family's experience as a family, just totally dedicated to baseball and to sort of forever training and developing skills. This was something that the Oriole team was known for back in the day. They called it the Oriole Way, which was just training fundamentals so well and making investment in players who wouldn't necessarily even come along to play for the Orioles, but just as a means of creating a positive culture throughout their whole organization that would then lift them to success, which in a small market team, of course, they had a great deal of success in the 60s and 70s. But so that's Boswell, is and Angell together, finding ways to approach stories to write about the game that maybe other people hadn't. I remember Boswell found a piece about a few people. This is in like 1980, before the personal computer revolution put sports statistics everywhere. He found a group of people who met once a year for an entire week to play a sort of fantasy baseball season using stats that they had culled from reference books and newspapers, and using rules they had written themselves to allow for all sorts of permutations. It was kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, but baseball. And Boswell met these guys and they talked to him, and he got a very entertaining piece of sports writing out of it. And it was kind of prophetic for all of the people who now, one of their main experiences of sports is essentially treating it like a role-playing game where they role-play as a manager or a general manager. The whole sports betting world probably owes a lot to the people like this. But what I find interesting about these guys, aside from just the enjoyment of it, is thinking about how they fill a spot in the game generally, which might be sort of like a sophisticated kind of enticement. They don't play these games for fun. This is a business. They want people to come out. They want to enjoy them, and there is a wide range of enticements that you use to get people engaged in your activity. Some of the simplest are just, to show, like, something awesome, something tremendous, and it's only $1 for the show or whatever, and the beer is 10 cents or what have you. I'm thinking of, like, the '60s, not nowadays with our horrific, um, superstar big money approach to live sporting events. Um, but guys like Boswell and Angell have a kind of, probably fundamentally not that vital, part of this overall enticement, but one that people seem to want, which is they give sort of like deep context to the event. They by like writing about baseball, with like an eye to its history and to its appeal and to all the sort of like little facets of the game, and bringing them out in good prose. They create a sort of longer, lasting enticement than just the usual, advertising or the intrinsic appeal of the game itself. They create a kind of like culture of lifelong attachment, because which they would write about in their stuff. Angell in particular would write about how the game, had impacted him over the course of his whole life, and how each time he engaged with baseball to some extent, it was like putting another brick into the overall baseball structure, that was inside his life. And they can be quite lyrical. Some sports writers, can, in different, when they're not just reporting on a particular game, but in like a weekly magazine, like the New Yorker, they can, sort of use different mediums than typical, different modes. Angell in particular, I remember at one point he just had ended one of his little essays about baseball with just like a long list of players' names, just sort of like repeated, like Mickey Mantle, Ty Cobb, Pete Rose, this kind of like litany of, all stars or not, just names that will like ring in your associations. And it was effective, and it kind of puts the imprint of, I don't want to say how to put it. It makes loving sports as much as people do a little more acceptable, to the world around them, by paying that kind of lyrical tribute to it. It both pulls us out and makes us want to um, engage with the game again by reminding us of all the associations we have with it, and of all the, work and all of the effort that goes into putting on a single game. And it also, teaches us maybe that's the wrong way to put it. It fills us with the sense, if this is something that I deeply feel is worth, my time and attention, I feel a little, I feel backed up in that opinion a little bit, when I see it delved into at length, in a magazine. That's a big part of what enticement is. Enticement is sort of like, you're right for thinking this is interesting and fun and wanting to be part of it. You're right for wanting to partake in this. Let me tell you why you're even more right than you know, and all you got to do is come on down. So it's kind of like the carnival barker's pitch. Like, I know you're interested in this, but let me tell you why it's even more amazing than you think it is. Why there's even more going on, than you would understand. And of course, taken to, its natural limits, this leads us to kind of like, sheer fantasy and all of the kind of really, really over the top, writing you get, or cultural work you get in general about any, human activity that people love, is at some point it takes flight from all reality, sheer fantasy and whimsy, and certainly sports in the U.S., perhaps baseball a little bit more than all of them, just because of its longevity, are prone to this, flight into fantasy. But Angell and Boswell are pretty good writers, and they generally stay just this side of fantasy. They're all, they're in reality, but they're enticing us to enter more fully into the fantasy of sport and to find new ways to interact with it and draw meaning from it for our lives. So yeah, both these gentlemen's books are, I think, still available. They each had at least 4 or 5 books on baseball, and I would put them up there with some of the best writing on the game. All right, bye now.